We're here to explore diverse career paths through personal experiences and real-life examples.
And also to offer profound insights to inspire your professional journey.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Work Without Borders. Today, I'm so honored to invite my ex-colleague, Rob Campbell, from my time at White & Kennedy Shanghai. Welcome, Rob.
Hello,
Welcome.
it's lovely to see you again. And hello, Calvin. It's great to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you too, Rob.
So I knew Rob from 2010-ish, and then he had worked at White & Kennedy, RGA, and he has worked in territories like America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. And then he made a lot of famous work for Nike, Spotify, IKEA, P&G, Converse, Chrysler, and rock band Metallica. We will definitely get into that part later. But what I want to say is that I knew Rob as the lead strategist for White & Kennedy, which is a leading creative agency. And then honestly, that was the first time I got to know that, oh, creativity doesn't only mean great visual or crazy copywriting, but there is a lot of strategy coming behind the creativity, the creative ideas. And then I was lucky enough to have witnessed a lot of work Rob has participated. So when Rob and I reconnected about our podcast, I was so happy and then thrilled. And then today we finally got him on our show. Let's begin.
All right, so Rob, I think I don't know if Flora's introduction can do it justified, but if you don't mind,
No, not at all.
if you could give the audience a brief introduction about yourself, that'll be great.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is Flora's introduction was far too nice, to be quite honest. It's like, yeah, I was born in England. Then my mum was Italian. Honestly, I feel that I do have a career, which blows my mind in many ways. But I have a career. If my parents were alive, especially my dad, he would be, I wrote about this recently, he would be utterly shocked at what I do. Not the fact that I can do it, but because it's kind of, there are some days where, yeah, I can really hate everything and everyone. That's part of the creative journey in some respects. But there's parts where I just go, what am I doing? Because I'm enjoying working with really imaginative people. And I love that. I love helping people be successful, but as a byproduct of doing something amazing. And yeah, so my whole career has basically been a lot of luck, a bit of talent, and an openness to live wherever I'm excited. So I have an incredibly understanding wife who, like, my son has just turned 9. This is his 4th country. I've got my cat is next to me here. She's 17 and this is her 8th country. Now we're in New Zealand.
The cat from
so my career's
Shanghai.
just been about Singapore. She was
Singapore.
Yeah, but it's the same cat in Shanghai. Yeah, Rosie. So yeah, my tell you a bit about me. It's honestly, it's like luck, curiosity, and people who've believed me. That's really it. And
That's
a bit
a very humble statement. I'm pretty sure the
Well,
talent
no,
plays the most part.
No, I mean, I've got more than a healthy ego, but if I'm being honest about it, there's people who are far more talented than me who haven't been able to achieve what I've got because I have been lucky. And I think it's important that I mention that because too often people talk about it as I've met people who are very, very strategic in their decisions in life. And some of them do great things and some of them haven't. And I can't imagine the stress that must feel. So yeah, my life's a happy accident. And yeah, and I work hard for that, but it's a happy accident.
How did it get you to move to the creative strategy? Because that doesn't sound like a very usual career path that people could think of, right? Like, how did it get started? Is that why your father was mad at you because he's coming from like more of a traditional kind of background?
No, I mean, my dad was he was called, well, it's now called the King's Council, but accused he was a human rights barrister. And
Oh,
my mum's family were all lawyers against the mafia. So it was law was a really important thing. And I love law. I'm not clever enough for law.
oh, you're too
And
modest.
I started off as no, I'm not. I mean, I'm not. It's like, and I started off as a studio musician. So I played on a bunch of famous and some terrible pop stars music and stuff. And I fucked up, which I knew I was doing, but I just thought I was 18. I was going, who
Why not,
cares?
right?
Yeah. And then I ended up in this purely because one of my dad's friends was involved in advertising and introduced me to someone. I didn't even know anything about advertising. I love creativity, but I literally had no passion for it because I didn't know it existed. I just had passion for creativity. I loved art and visuals and language and books. And I was fortunate he introduced me to what became one of the best agencies that ever existed, an agency in the UK called Hal Henry. And then I realized that the job was finding out was emotion, really. It wasn't logic. There is a logic to it, but it was understanding emotion. I loved it. I loved meeting people. And so then I was there for quite a long time. I think your first job really defines a lot, or at least I'm old now, 53. It's like back then it did that. And also back then I didn't go to university. And I was able to do that because right now that would be harder, which I find horrible. And then I just fell into it, and I've done work that's famous thanks to some brilliant colleagues and clients. And Flora knows this. I'm pretty outspoken, and if I think someone's doesn't mean that I'm right, but I'm going to ask questions because I want to find out if it's been thought through. And the thing that's been really weird, and in Colenso, where I am now, New Zealand, they find it weird. I can be quite rude, but in a way where the clients love me for it because they know that I'm not doing it to be an asshole. I'm doing it because I want them to be better and I want them to succeed better. And somehow, it's certainly not my looks, but they've kept me around. So that's it. It's all, and it's quite fun because I have a fucking amazing little boy, Otis, and he wants to be a YouTuber and all the usual stuff. And it's quite interesting because as a parent, I want him to be happy and fulfilled. And I have to resist the urge to go, oh, why don't you think about it? Because my parents were amazing. They would have liked me to have gone into law or medicine. But when I didn't want to do that, they asked a lot of questions. But when they realized I was serious about it, they backed me. And so I think I'm a byproduct of parental support, even though they probably would have liked me to have done something else. And so I honestly feel an obligation to make the most out of my life for the support they gave me because they didn't have to do that.
Wow. Well, that's beautiful. That's the best type of parents you can get.
Yeah. You only realize it afterwards though, because at the time you're like going, hey, why are you not doing this? But yeah, and that's why I think when I lived in China, and obviously the parental aspect there is quite different, but not in a bad way. So it's still done with love. And I think a lot of people, I'm very loyal to China. Like I know it's got messed up in a bunch of stuff. Every country's messed up. But when I did the Thank You Mum campaign for PNG and stuff, and I remember writing the brief and it said, the original thing I wrote was, if a mum in America has a kid that likes sport, they might drop them off at 10 a.m. and pick them up at 3 p.m. on a Saturday. But if a Chinese mum has her only child who's good at sport, and the government go, they're very good at sport, they might drop them off at 9 a.m. and pick them up 3 years later. And I said, we might think that is a terrible thing, but sacrifice for love, even though it's in a different construct, is one of the most amazing things. And we need to celebrate that rather than criticize that. Because that's when Tiger Mums were out. And I remember even at Wyden, there were people who were really upset about me saying that. And that's why I think I might not agree with how it's done, but I understand the motivations behind it. And hopefully that's my thing. It's like understanding I care about what other people care about, even if I disagree. And
That's truly insightful. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm still kind of tearing up remembering that campaign. It was just so beautiful. It's about like a mom drop off their kids at the gymnastic school. You know, gymnastic school in China is like super difficult, but what Rob said is the sacrifice, the motivation behind the sacrifice, and then that he could understand, and um, that is also very, very shocking to me because they always start with the strategy before they start the creative process. And I still remember, Rob, the Fiat one. You basically led the strategic planning on how Italian people and Chinese people are sharing a lot of
oh
things
yeah,
at
for
the same.
Fiat. Yeah. That was it was just interesting with that sort of stuff because again, everyone goes for the lowest common denominator. And that's not a China thing, that's a global thing right now. And I watched a documentary 30 years ago. There was one, and it was a really avant-garde cable TV channel. It was before HBO, it was great. But they said, we always go for the highest common denominator. And my mum's Italian, I'm half Italian. So there was no way I was going to do a Fiat ad in China talking just about pasta and football. Like there's no, and everyone kept saying to me, but Italy's known for luxury fashion, bitter football, and pasta. And I was like, my mum would murder me if I just did that. But then when we spoke to people, yeah, and there were a lot of, and China and Italy, at its heart, have always valued simple things done well.
Yes.
At its heart. And I was going, and I said, China is the Italy of Asia, and Italy is the China of Europe. And people were like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I was like, and then it was like explaining why. And Ryan and Achilles did that work. I think it was Achilles as well.
Yeah.
And my mum, we talked to my mum about what should the line be. And yeah, it was great. I love that. And even that was hard to even get the clients to understand because it was a French guy in China talking about beer. It was weird, man. It was like, then you got, I can't remember what Ryan's from he's the most American sounding person, not from Guam. That's where he is. There's all this mission. But yeah, it was, I've always really appreciated that. And I remember, do you remember Sue Wu?
Of course.
Yeah.
She speaks French. Yeah.
Yeah, she does. Oh yeah, she does. My God. But I remember when we were doing the P&G thing, and we were talking about parents wanting the best for their children. And that's often why there's so much extra schoolwork they give them to learn. And I remember saying to Sue, and I was saying it a bit as a joke as well. I said, you know, the other reason why your mum might have done that. She goes, why? I said, because you've ended up in advertising. And she can say, well, at least I tried my best by giving her extra education. And so your mum feels less guilty about it. And she was like, oh my. And while I said it as a joke, there's an underlying motivation as well in those elements. And I think that just comes from talking to people and living in lots of places. And I don't know where I'm going with that, but yeah, it's always been a joy for me.
Right. So you've lived in a lot of places and talked to a lot of people. What is it really like to have worked in so many places?
For me, it's pure joy and excitement. It can be very hassly. Like we've lived in 4 countries in 8 years now. But overall, we've lived in, I don't know, so many, like double digits, like a lot of countries. The packing up is always a pain. The moving my cat is always a pain and all that stuff. But pretty much there's been one place I didn't really like as much as all the others, but that was less about the place and more about the environment I was in. But the ability to, in one way, almost start again, and rediscover, or for me, it's a joy. I remember meeting somebody in China, and they said, I met them and said, "Do you know where you can get a Belgian cheese here?" And I went, "Belgium, isn't it?" It's like, you can't come to China and want to try and recreate your past life, because then you're not in China, you're just, your body's in China.
Spot on.
And I have learned, I mean, it's tattooed all over me, what China in particular. It has taught me things to look at the world in ways that I would never, ever, ever have considered. And I will always be fiercely protective of it, because it of all the places I lived, it changed my life in the most profound and deep way, and I've been able to take that into other places and different aspects, and every country has its unique codes. What I get frustrated about is, like, in New Zealand and Australia, sometimes they go, humor is one of our cultural identities, and I go, well, it's kind of a cultural identity in a lot of countries. It's what's the humor is what I want to find out. Not just, it's a bit like, I remember Dan Wyden. Dan used to say a global human truth. He'd talk about it. And I remember having lunch with him once, and I said, "Dan, could you stop saying this, please?" He's like, "What, Campbell?" And it was around PNG time, and I said, "Look, all mothers love their kids, but the way a mother in Wuhan is able to express that is different. So the global human truth is just a general statement. It's the nuance of the context and culture that really make it different." And
Absolutely.
living in a different country has expanded my ability to understand humanity. That has allowed me to grow. And so for me, New Zealand will not be our last place. It's great here. It's been amazing for my son and for my wife, but it won't be the last. I think I've got 3 big moves left in my life.
Which are?
Well, they're just different countries. I don't even know which country, but I don't want to go back to where I've been. I've done that once, which was the UK, and that was for the family. But my wife probably feels that she's got 2. So that's going to be an interesting conversation. But when I moved back to England after 25 years away, my parents had both died, so I went to quite an emotionally questioning myself why I waited till then. But what I hated was everyone thought my journey was over. You're back now. You've done it. You've had your fun. Now what? And I'm like, I don't live like that. So yeah, we'll see. So what's it like? Well, I don't know what it's not like, because I've been doing this all my life. And I don't criticize or question anyone that has decided to stay where they're at. But for me, every single thing, this is genuinely true, every single thing in my life, except my best friend Paul in England, everything in my life is because I moved away from England. Everything. Wouldn't have met my wife, so I wouldn't have had my son. Wouldn't have my cat. I wouldn't be talking to you because I wouldn't know you. I mean, okay. I mean, for me, I think the biggest thing is that a lot of people talk about when they don't move overseas because they're worried about what they'll miss. And I completely understand that. And I will never criticize anybody for that. But what we also have to think about is what we gain. And I've gained in every possible, I've lost stuff. There's definitely a bit of disconnection. I know lots of people, but I don't have many friends, if I'm being really honest. But I've gained so much. And I said everything in my life is important. So yeah, I think, and you're testimony to that. You know, I met you, in China, then you moved to America. And it's like, I tell you what really fucks me off, and it's terrible. It's when people say I've lived overseas, and what they actually mean is they spent 6 months living somewhere. That's not living overseas. That's a long holiday.
Mhm.
And like you got to commit. You can't just be interested. But everyone's different. But yeah, I will one day when we leave this place, I will miss our house. I love our house so much. It's the favorite place we've ever lived. We all think this, but not enough for me not to keep wanting to explore somewhere. So we'll see.
Mm, okay. Well, it looks like you have moved across the globes, right? So many places, but like, and then I also really love the aspect that you were emphasizing that you have to look at what you have gained. But when, like, let's say, what would you say to people who wants to move but is afraid of changing, for or facing the different culture or like environment or being so far away from their family? Like, what would you say to them?
Um, if you want to move, I mean, okay, this is the bleakest thing I would say. So I moved to Australia, and well, I was going to move to Australia, and then my father had a terrible stroke, and I went, I'm not moving. I was nine. No, I wasn't. I was 24 or something. And my parents said I had to go. I talked about it for a year. Like to me, that's love. They could have made me stay. And in the 9 years or so, 10 years I was in Australia, I got 3 phone calls in the middle of the night saying my dad had 24 hours left to live. And they're not phone calls anymore, anyone wants. And each time I got back, and each time he was alive for me. Now, the last time was hard. That's the worst possible scenario, and I still move overseas. And my parents were amazing. So for me, it's like you can still like there was no Skype or Zoom or Teams when I went. It was like a phone call that cost a fortune. Now it's much easier. But I would say if you don't want to go, that's fine. If you want to go, but you're worried about it, I almost think you've got to do it. Like, I just think you've got to. I love that Otis was born in China. He loves it. Like he's so proud he was born in China. He says I'm Chinese, which fucks up a lot of people. Like when we first came here, there's a place called Dominion Road, and it's where traditional Chinese food is. And we went in, and my son's cute, and especially old Chinese grandmothers, Western kids, like,
Yeah,
and
you just got them.
yeah. And then when we said he was born in China, and they were like, what? And he goes, I'm Chinese. And they were like happy as shit. They were like, this is amazing. And I showed them a video of Otis at 4 months old. I lived in the former French concession on Parking. There was a park near there. And I've got a video of him being passed around to like 20 Chinese elderly people just doing this. It's the worst thing a parent should do. And we're there, they loved him. And it's like, and I love that he was there. It's a privilege. Yeah, you got to do it. If you want to do it and you've got the opportunity to do it, it doesn't mean you have to stay there forever.
Mm.
And it's going to be tough, but my God, it's going to be great as well.
Mm. But at any time in your life, you're afraid of losing your British identity, like now you get a mix of Chinese, New Zealand, Australian. Are you afraid of that?
No, I mean, it's like, it, I mean, I was in England a month ago. It's not great at the moment. It's like, but no, I'm not. The world at the moment is a bit fucked up. It's very nationalistic all over the place. Everyone thinks their place is great, even though they know it's not. I think the idea of going to lots of countries is more powerful than the United Nations in actually maybe fixing the place. Like the amount of people that would come to China with all their prejudice. And it's like, and then they would leave very differently. Because every country I've lived in, every single one, people have been generally really good to us. Have we met some assholes? Yeah, they're one-offs. There'd be assholes everywhere. But fundamentally, we've been welcomed. Yeah. And because you're not from there, you can ask questions that maybe culturally you shouldn't ask. But because you're not from there, everyone's quite open to help. Like in America, I talked about race that a lot, which is obviously a very challenging subject there. But I hate racism and prejudice. And because I'm British, the Black community was so amazing, and the Hispanic community, in helping me because they knew I was genuine in it. So yeah, I've come away with way more. So am I worried about these? No. I mean, and even if it is like, I don't know what it means anymore, being British. It's, and I can't change it. My passport is a British passport. I mean, it's literally that, you know. But no, there's way more things I should be worried about missing out on. Losing. I still get up in the middle of the night to watch my football team. Like you can, technology is amazing now. So, but I think it's, for me, I've always gone, when I'm, touch wood, 80, 90 years old, I want to look back and go, I have lived. And for me, this is how I do it.
Wow, that was beautiful. Yeah, I think that definitely, sends a lots of encouragement for people, are on the edge of whether they should move or not. Even sometimes I have this doubt, right? I'm sure Flora and I can relate this, for you when you moved from Shanghai to Vancouver back in 2016. I'm sure that was, like not easy, right? And same as me when I moved to Canada back in 2012, I was like the same. Like I was like, well, like I was worried about all the changes and stuff, my, being away from my family, but and then I was like, you know what, you just gotta do it.
Yeah.
And then now when I look back, I feel really appreciative, just as you said, I feel like I have all these Canadian aspects, in me, and then also I have the Chinese core. So yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
elevated us in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, Canada's got quite a strong Chinese community, hasn't it?
Oh yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
It
Yeah.
does.
I mean, yeah, and there's also that, I think the most important thing is when you live in another country, it's great to meet people where you're from because there's a connection there. But you can't then become an island where,
Absolutely.
and what I found, I've also met people who live in another country, but it's like they're not. And I find that doesn't mean you should let go of what you've come from, but you should also embrace the other aspects. Because then I think that then you evolve and grow. And parents, like the fact that my parents still wanted me to move when at the worst time of their life with my father's illness. I hope I told them what that meant to me. Because I didn't want to go. They kind of forced me. And there were times where I said, I'm going to come back. I can tell it's too hard. And they went, you're not ready. We'd love you to come back, but you're not ready. We know you're not. And I'm like, whoa, that's like, I really hope I'm the same person when that happens with Otis. Because it's the only way that we're all going to move to a slightly better place with more understanding. But yeah,
Are you the only child?
Yeah, only child.
Oh.
Okay.
So yeah, hence they could have. It wouldn't have been hard for them to say, "We need you to stay."
Right.
We know
Exactly.
you've been planning. So yeah, but that's honestly their encouragement. There was almost this. It took me years to realize it, but I almost feel that there was this underlying element that goes, if I don't make the most out of what I've done, I'm insulting my parents' support. I really, even now, and my mum died in 2015, my dad in 99, so a long time ago. And I still feel, and I have a family now and all that stuff, but yeah, I find it hard to say no to stuff because I just get excited about creativity in any aspect, but also the other side is just, I'd like to think, I'm not religious at all, but I'd like to think that my parents would be going, all right, well done.
I would think so too. I would think so too.
We'll see.
Yeah, you've mentioned that your dad would be surprised that you have a career like this. And then I was gonna ask, but now I kind of get it. Like I'm piecing it together, right? So you're a musician from the get-go. So you're
Yeah.
working on stuff with Metallica, and then you are excited by the creativity, so you work on creative strategies, and then you also like to help people, so you're doing mentoring and education. As far as I understand, this is
Yeah.
what the intersection of your current career status. But that doesn't sound like you planned it this way. So I'm really
Uh,
curious how everything get together even without planning, because a lot of young people, they were like, I can't know, I don't want to plan, I don't have a plan, like, and then life happens, it's not always going into the direction you want it to be. And then career, right, a lot of job is going to disappear due to the technology, due to the environment, and then a lot of new jobs are coming up. So without a lot of certainty, without a lot of planning, how would you still get a career which fulfills you and then make you happy?
what if I was starting now? Do you
No,
mean,
yeah,
or just
like
generally?
just generally, or now, either way, I think I would love to know the insight in that.
But I mean, so in 2019, I got made redundant in the UK, and I was not 2019, 2020. I turned 50. That's a pretty shitty age. I mean, losing your job isn't it? At 50, it's like,
I
what
can
are we going to do?
understand.
We just bought a house. I had like my son was 6. You know, it's like, and I would do it to look after my family. If I had to sweep the roads, I'd sweep the roads. It's an honourable job. You know, I'd do that. But there's also a lot of bullshit where people, these are the bits sometimes about Asian society that I do find hard, where you have to maintain a certain look rather than let your vulnerability show. And I got made redundant because of COVID. So I did an Instagram post with a for sale sign put on my face. And I was genuinely happy I had been made redundant because I had a lot of young people, people of color, women, members of the LGBTQ community who often are the first ones that go. So I was going, I've got enough experience where I can probably get myself out of it. It still stunk, but
Of course.
so I did this thing, and then the Guardian newspaper, because I was one of the first people that was loud about losing my job, wrote an article on me, and they asked me, why did you do it? Like, and I said, well, one, I kind of want to bust the myth that losing your job is bad, because companies are assholes, because they love to say they want you to feel guilty for it, so you stay quiet so they can carry on. And I'm like going, and RGA, who made me redundant, they weren't bad at all, but I wasn't going to let it be I should feel shame for something it was COVID, man, you know. So, and I said to them, the more people I let know that I am made redundant, the more chances that someone's going to go, maybe I'll talk to him. And if you are open to anything, then every possibility has a chance of happening. And lo and behold, 2 major things happen. One, Chinese billionaire that I'd done some work with said, well, I'm signing you up to work with me, whatever. And then Colenso said, do you want to move to New Zealand? In a day. Now, that's
Amazing.
fortunate. That's very fortunate. I'm not taking that for granted. Work with both still. I do a lot of other work. For me, it's about, I'm very grateful. I hopefully work with people who are good people, who are interesting people. But I've never had a plan. And and that's why I say I'm lucky. But I'm also open stuff. When I remember when Wyden asked me to go to China, BBH also asked me to go to China. And in my head, I went, one way or the other, it seems we're going to China. Like the universe is saying we're going to China. So which one scares and excites me the most? And I love BBH. I knew more people there. But Wyden was like, I don't know what would happen there. That excites me. And I'm a white male. I've got privilege coming out my ass, so we're not going to suffer. And so it was like, let's go for it. And again, massive props to my wife, because none of this would happen if she wasn't also supportive. Like, it's harder for her. I go into an infrastructure where it's built around me or what I need. She has to start again. Then she had her cake company in Shanghai, which she built up from scratch and all that stuff. But that's it. I'm a dinosaur. The world's changed so much. So if you're young, how do you get a job? It's tough, man. And that's why I have a real problem where I want companies to make money, because if they make money, they can look after people. What I don't like, though, is that there's this disrespect to so many people within their organization. So the reason I'm involved with some educational stuff is I want people that think they don't have a chance or a shot to go, maybe you do. Let me see what I can do. Not false promise. I saw a TikTok a couple of days ago, this old rich guy. And he said, how'd you get successful? And he goes, I got successful because I didn't spend all my life planning. Because if you spend all your life planning for something, you talk yourself out of something. And it hit me like a fucking truck. I went, you're right. It's like, that doesn't mean you're just a stupid ego. But if you get too close, you will find a way to minimize it. And the Chinese gentleman, Mr. G, that I work with, he's another person that changed my life. As only billionaires can be, he's got his view of the universe is unique, but I get it. I absolutely get what he said, like in my bones. And he asks me to write his speeches or do like. And what I love about it is he is a real entrepreneur. He's going, I think this is it. Let's see what happens. Versus, let's make sure every single thing is done. And then he's very smart. You don't get to that wealth without being super smart. But the obsession with having every detail crossed, the risks are high. But I actually think that doing that also increases the risks of it not happening, because it ends up being the thing that controls you rather than you can be able to roll with things. But I don't have a master plan for it, honestly. It's just, I've met some amazing people. I need to validate myself, because I do know there's a lot of very smart people who haven't had the same advantages as me. And I feel a fraud for that. So the least I can do is actually try and help hear, listen to people who are questioning it. Because quite often they're made to feel they have to act a certain way to be accepted versus believe in what's important to them. And yeah, I don't know. It's a real honor for me to do that. I'll always respond to emails to people and stuff, just because I've been there. It could be me so easily, so easily. So yeah, maybe it's my attempt to earn some good karma points for being such a prick.
That was beautiful. Yeah. Shows how kind of a person you are.
And humble.
Yes.
Oh no,
yes.
no, that's the last thing. But yeah, it's and also having my son. I mean, it's like when I became a dad, my first worry was, will I be able to afford to look after him? That was it. When he was born, it was, will I be able to make him proud that I'm his dad? And so there's also an element, and it was a switch. It blew my mind. And there's a bit where it's just like, I need to I mean, he's spoiled like a motherfucker. You know, I love the reality world, but he needs to see me doing stuff, not talking about stuff.
Absolutely.
And because he has something called dysgraphia, which is a form of dyslexia. And so he finds writing very difficult. And when I say that, I mean actually in terms of holding a pen, not spelling. He can spell, but so he's got now. Thank God, technology means that that's not really going to be as much of an issue anymore. But we live in a society where companies want everyone to have gone to university, done a certain thing. He might never go. He might. It doesn't mean he can't. He can learn just as well as anyone else. He just has to learn in a different way. But companies are often treating people like that as outsiders. We see it all the time. And so part of this is also to make sure that he sees the world as going, I can do that stuff, rather than I'm different for the wrong reasons. So
I'm limited.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, since you mentioned that, Rob, I would never have seen you and having kids, honestly. Because, you know, Calvin, when Rob was in Shanghai, he was wearing a pair of Birkenstock year round, literally year round, with his toe showing outside even in the winter of Shanghai. So I never saw him as a I was actually quite surprised when I saw the picture on your Instagram that you had Otis.
I mean, that's been a. I mean, I still wear my Birkenstocks. I mean, there's still a lot of immaturity. Don't worry, Flora. But it's like,
well, I just hope it's not too cold for your toes.
No. Well, I've got a lot of Nikes. They used to give me so many, and now I can wear them. So it's like I also wear those. But no, he's been a. I honestly think China helped me become a better dad, because you know what my team were like. You know, Leon, Sue, Shireen, like a bunch of opinionated, beautiful assholes. Like it was like they taught me patience. Like they taught me, and
Cherini, he's so gentle.
I'm really hoping I get to see you soon. But we'll see. Hopefully, I turn out to be a dad he's proud of.
Nice. Yeah. I think, you know, like Rob, like you've shared so many insights, right, from your own experience. There's like 2 points, if you don't mind, I actually want to go back into like dig a bit deeper. I think the one thing that you mentioned that also hit me was that just don't plan. Otherwise you could, you know, possibly talk out yourself for the other possibility out there. But in terms of like actual, I mean, you know, for like general public, you know, like that's coming up from more of a conventional background, like, does it also make sense to plan for like a, you know, like a bigger direction and then to set yourself with some goals and afterwards you just, you know, go with the rides and then to see what's coming up? Like, do you think that also makes sense that like, or like that just, you know, it's like
if it makes sense to the individual, I'm not going to tell anyone what to do. I mean, if it makes sense to them, that's good. I mean, whenever I start a new job, and every year when we're having our stuff, I always say to people, what are we working towards? What are we working towards and what excites you? My job as a boss is to make sure that when people leave, and they will all leave, they get a bigger job than they thought they would ever be possible. That is what my job is. So we spend a lot of time talking. When I say don't plan, that doesn't mean be stupid. It's like, it's follow what's exciting, acknowledge that there might be different, because a lot of people go, I hate my job, but it pays me well. I really want to do that, and I don't want to take the pay cut. And it's like, that's your choice then. And I understand that with responsibilities and all those things. But if you're young, I do go, my parents said to me, they wanted me to live a life of fulfillment, not content. And I took a long time to understand what that meant. But what they really mean is contentment is about comfort, which is beautiful and valuable. But they wanted me to be able to look back and go, I've evolved and done something. This wasn't about just the trappings of comfort. This was about emotional fulfillment and satisfaction. So my mum, for example, when she was 60, decided she wanted to learn Russian. just because she wanted to learn it.
Mm.
And so she did, because for her, there was something for her where it goes, the sheer joy of doing something because you will enjoy doing it. And there's a lot of people who only do stuff to get ahead.
Mm.
Mm.
And that's not, I mean, that's great with drive and stuff, but the people who do stuff because they want to evolve, not just like in careers, there's a quest for speed versus substance. So
Mm.
I'm notorious for not giving promotions. I'm hard to give a promotion. Because I just think a lot of people are giving promotions really quickly. I will give it sooner than they think they should get it, but I will not just give them out. No way. No way. I have a responsibility to them, the people I work with, and the industry I work in. So I want to, but so there's a real, fulfillment is really important to me. For some people, it will always be just a job, and we need those people. But for me, I would like to try and create an environment where people feel there is an intellectual, emotional, and personal fulfillment that goes beyond just everyone liking each other, because there's a competition between each other.
Mm.
But so making a plan for some people, if that works for them, that's great. But just don't plan it so tightly that you're blinkered to other possibilities.
That's gold.
Absolutely.
Calvin, you said you have another question?
Yeah, I mean, that was more of something that, yeah, because also Rob mentioned, right? Like, I think that, like that point about being open and open communication, even, about laying off and stuff. Because I was just thinking, right, like throughout, I think like since COVID, right? Like, especially, like for the last 2 years, a lot of the tech companies out there are doing like, terrible layoffs.
Yeah.
And, often, for the people that I've encountered, a lot of them are just feel very embarrassed about sharing their own experience, and then they feel kind of, shameful for putting it online that, oh my God, they got laid off, and then now they're in an awkward situation. Um, but I 100% agree with what Rob shared, is that you need to be loud about it, so people who, come across it, and whoever thinks that you're a great person would probably lend you a hand. So yeah, I just wanted to, say that's very insightful.
It's interesting because like LinkedIn have this open to work thing.
Yeah.
I hate that, because that to me just, I feel that that's like desperation.
Me
You
too.
should be, it's that it's fine. It's okay to I got laid off. These are the things I'm doing. This is why. You don't slag off the place you work, where you work. It happens. As long as they didn't do it. If they treat you like shit, absolutely go after them. But this open to work. But then I have a question. I question LinkedIn's legitimacy of caring about individuals anyway. But but it's going to happen. And Calvin, the reality is, I never thought it was going to happen to me. Never thought it was going to happen. I always thought, I've been through a lot of these things. I work hard and all this stuff. There's lots of me. I thought, and then it happened to me. And yet, it was funny. The night before, I'd said to my wife, either they're going to give up on me or I'm going to give up on them. It was coming to that point, I think. And then by pure chance, the next day, they made me redundant. So I remember going in, we were working from home with COVID, and I went in, my wife and son were in our bedroom. And I said, guess what? She goes, what? I said, just me. And what was annoying is they'd asked me to make loads of people redundant.
That's annoying.
And then they made me redundant. I still don't think that was cool. I think that was, and also one of the people they made me redundant, they then hired back. So that poor person was emotionally, that I was treated well, but that was not good. And I went to my wife, said they've let me go. She goes, how do you feel? I went, feel good. And I genuinely did feel good. But that's we're privileged as hell. Very fortunate. But what I would say is that working is very important. It is. but it's only part of what life's about. And so it's like, that's why for me, it's like being able to stay open to possibilities and opportunities. Like I'm working on some stuff at the moment with people who in a billion years I never would have thought I'd ever work with. And quite frankly, I don't really know what I'm doing with them. They like me around. I like to be part of it. And I think part of that is because I am open to stuff. People have gone, I'd be quite interested to hear what Rob would say on this. Let's get Rob in. Versus just be, and I'm quite unprofessional in a lot of ways. So quite adaptable. But we did a project last year, Calvin, with young kids around New Zealand, young adults. And we called it Dream Small. It was pretty bleak. Because people love this country. New Zealand's a pretty special country. But it's a conformist country. It's seen as very liberal. It's not. And if you're a kid, it's very far away from stuff. So you see all this stuff happening on the internet and you go, why is that not happening here? This is a very special place. But that's not cool. That's not good. And so I do worry about stuff like that. And I think in rural Canada or in the flyover states in America or different parts of the UK, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So that's why the idea of we're told that you have to plan to succeed. And I think that often holds people back. Don't be stupid, but don't get so caught up in everything that you never actually find the energy to make a first step. That's what my advice would be.
That's a great point, Rob.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks.
I actually want to come back to one of your point when you were talking about there's a lot of luck in your career, and then sometimes you feel like you could have failed and so close. But that sounds to me a little bit like imposter syndrome. Do you have that? Like, do you feel like you have
100%.
that?
100%.
How do you conquer that, Rob? I need to know that.
So I don't know if you were there when Paula Bloodworth was at Wyden when I brought her to Shanghai to run Nike.
No, must be my after my time.
She's phenomenal, like fucking phenomenal. Then she went to run Nike globally at Portland. Now she works for Idris Elba. She's amazing. And she was Wyden in America sent her to a specialist, a professional specialist to help with your skills. And Paula said that they should talk to me and hear what they said. And because Paula has imposter syndrome as well, lots of people do.
Yeah.
And I said to what I said to her, I suddenly realized it was probably true to me. I said, imposter syndrome is an incredibly exhausting burden. But in Paula's case, and then I realized it was in my case, and I hope she doesn't mind me saying this. I've told her this. It's what keeps me not taking anything for granted. It's what makes sure that I keep wanting to do better work. I do think I'm pretty good at what I do, if I'm being honest.
You are.
I don't think I'm the best at what I do. I think but what imposter syndrome has done for me is I will work hard, man. I will work hard to make sure I've really thought about it. Have I really considered? Am I really happy with it? I can't phone it in. I remember we were doing a pitch once at Wyden for a car company, and Tom, Roddy, Shirini were there, and I'd written it. We were there at 2:00 in the morning, and we finished. And then I read it, and I said to them, I remember this because they made me so proud of them. I read it. I'd written it. They were there just helping. I read it and I went, I'm bored. This bores the shit out of me. So I was literally looking at my own work. The meeting was in the morning. I went, I'm bored. This is boring me. And those three said, well, let's change it then. And I was so proud of them because it was 2 a.m. We could have said, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. But I can't do that. I cannot do that. And so we rewrote it. And that's what I don't like having imposter syndrome. I have it less than other people, but it's what makes sure that I don't believe my own brilliance. Keeps me on my toes.
Yeah, that's so cool. Just to try to grab energy out of it. I think that's the point. So with all your glowing experience, you actually said it's no biggie on your LinkedIn profile. You said I could say any or all of that, but I'm going to, because of the thing I'm proudest of is I've been called an asshole, quote, by Dan Wyden, Richard Branson, and Lars Ulrich. I can guess about Dan Wyden, and then I can guess definitely Lars Ulrich, but I want to ask, why did Richard Branson call you an asshole?
I mean, there's quite a lot of people that call me an asshole, but it's there's lots of ways you can say asshole. You can go asshole, as in like you're just a dick. But asshole, I hope and I think, has been you cheeky bastard for saying that. Because with Branson, with all of them, it's when I've gone, as I said at the beginning, I can be quite rude, but they know I'm doing it because I want them to be more successful. It's not because I'm saying I want them to be epic. If they're epic, everyone wins. And I was in a meeting I was very fortunate to be in a meeting with Richard Branson, and he was saying some stuff. And I asked him a question that kind of challenged the premise of what he said, but in the context of what he was trying to do. So I said, you said this, but you're trying to do that. Could you help me understand why you would do it that way? It was a specific element. I said, because I would not expect that's how you would have done it. I would have thought you'd do this. And I remember he just looked at me, and it was quite warm. And then in that same sentence, he said, that's a good point. That's a point that I've not really considered. He could have bluffed it out. He could have told me to shut up. He could have done, but he was almost great. He was definitely grateful, but gracious in it. And I like asking questions. I like being asked questions because it means you're focusing and concentrating. But yeah, he did. And then I started working with Branson on a project. And but yeah, I'm really proud that they call me an asshole, because it means, but why they call me, it wasn't they call me an asshole because I was rude, obnoxious. Call me an asshole because I was challenging them to be even better or as good as I wanted and believed they could be. And so he's hoping I get called asshole a bit more often.
That's so awesome. Thank you very much, Rob. The time flies, and this.
Yeah, it was very
insightful.
So yeah, I think you shared.
Thank
all
you
of, like,
so
great
much,
insights.
Rob.
Thank you.
Oh no, I appreciate you having any interest at all. Floor, it's amazing to see you. It's been absolutely amazing. Calvin, love to meet you. And it's like, it's the last thing I would say is, even though I'm 53 and it feels like it's gone in the blink of an eye, it's a pretty long life, and we're going to not just have one career anymore. So try and find the energy and the interesting in it. And like the career my son will one day have hasn't even been invented yet. And so when you acknowledge that, then you just go, try and be, there's people in very difficult situations. I'm very conscious of that. But for a lot of people who aren't, be serious about what you want to do, but don't be so serious about how you do it. That's probably the best way of saying it. And thank you so much for having me. I've loved it.
That's awesome. And then the sharing was so authentic. Thank you, Rob.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
It's like
I definitely knew you a little better.
Yeah. So insightful. So insightful. I personally learned so much. Yeah.
That's great, Rob.
Very kind. That's very kind. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And then thanks for allowing us changing the time back and forth. And we've been scheduling for 3 months.
Yeah, no, it's like we got there. I mean, God, we've talked about it for long enough. So it's like we got there. So that's great.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, I guess that's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. Or our audience can continue finding us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify by searching Work Without Borders. And we will see you again next Wednesday.